All right, guys. So if any of you have been watching, you know that I've been talking up this incredibly powerful journaling technique I call the Metascript method. It's a simple way to program your mind for discipline in just 5 minutes a day that thousands of guys have used to transform their lives. But recently, I received a question from Michael about the technique that is definitely something I should address. So here's what he says. Hey Mark, at the bottom of a recent email about metascripting, you said your current version of the technique is updated and is way more time efficient and high impact. I'd love to see a video explaining how you've improved the method, what exactly is different, and what led to these changes. The old version, your free PDF, was already very impactful for me, so I'd love to get clearer on taking the practice to the next level. Cheers. Okay, so great question. For those of you who don't know, the old version he's talking about is the version of the Metascript method that was released years ago when I put out my most popular YouTube series ever called the Man of Action series, okay? And that was back when the algorithm still kind of liked me and I was a little bit more tapped into the zeitgeist of things. At that time, literally tens of thousands of people downloaded the guide and I got tons of incredible feedback on it. You know, guys using it to quit porn, improve their habits, reprogram their mind, and generally transform their lives. And I use this in a lot of my programs. So many guys have gone through it and I coached just, lots of guys using the method. But as that happened, a few drawbacks to the technique, the original one, became very clear. The first drawback was that sometimes guys struggled to know exactly what to write. They didn't know what they needed to articulate and the words just didn't flow out of them. They would end up getting kind of stuck and frustrated in the journaling process. And this was especially true for guys who weren't very in touch with their emotions to begin with. Maybe they weren't used to doing self-talk, or they were just prone to tying themselves into knots internally. So for guys like that, the technique was a little bit harder to pick up. The second issue with the technique was that sometimes it was just not very time efficient. Some guys, they were spending, 20 minutes, 30 minutes, 40 minutes, an hour, 2 hours metascripting, trying to get to a feeling like, oh, I did what I needed to do. I got something useful out of it. And this wasn't everybody, but I definitely saw that guys felt like it was a bit of a time sink. It was heavy work, okay? And that was an issue, obviously, for just getting people to continuously use it. The third issue was that when guys practiced the old technique, they felt like it would end up being sort of repetitive, right? Especially if they weren't really doing it exactly right, but they just felt like, oh, like it's the same. I'm just writing the same crap every single day. And they would get bored of it and then they would stop doing it, which is obviously a problem. While the technique definitely worked, I kept kind of seeing these issues as something that would trip guys up. And the breakthrough for how to fix it actually occurred when I discovered the 3 frontline questions. And this is what my whole Frontline Man coaching program is built around. And so how I found these questions was like, I was basically at a pretty dark time in my life where I was dealing with a lot of really difficult things outside of my control, kind of just felt thrust upon me. And I felt like I was drowning, frankly. I was kind of like hitting rock bottom, trying to figure out how the heck am I going to get through this stuff. And in all that pain and suffering, the thing that happened to me was that this question emerged because I was like on the edge of despair, like ready to give it all up. All right. And I was in that point and I was just like, okay, well, given all this hard stuff you're dealing with, what do you want? What do you want to have happen? And I was like, okay, well, I want this to happen. I want this thing to work out. I want to get through this problem, blah, blah, blah. I just named the things that I wanted. And I asked myself, okay, well, how could we make that happen? How could we win? It's like, okay, well, I can keep doing this. I can do that. It's a shot. It's our best bet. I just came up with my options. And then the final question was, who will I be? Like, who do I have to be in order to follow this path? How do I got to think? How do I got to show up? Okay. And those were the 3 frontline questions. What do I want? How can I win? And who will I be? And they worked. All right. Like when I asked these questions, like they interrupted all of the negativity that I was dealing with, and they put me in a position of power. In many ways, they drew the power out of me because that's what questions do. They create a space. And when you do this properly, you'll find your energy just naturally coming up, your solutions naturally coming up, clarity naturally coming up. And I was like, whoa, okay, this is working, even with me and like the hardest stuff I've ever gone through in my life. And so I had some trust in this. I was like, okay, well, let's try it with some people. And that's when I ran the first pilot program of Frontline Man. And the results, luckily, were incredible for everyone. Okay, they got fantastic results from using these questions themselves. And I was like, oh, this is it. Okay, we figured it out. And one of the things I tried was modifying the Metascript method to use these 3 questions. And that was one of the most overwhelming successes, is that it took something that was already awesome and it just made it even better. It ended up addressing all of those fundamental issues. Like, the whole problem of people not knowing what to write. Well, the questions were pretty clear. And once you knew how to use them, you knew what to write. Okay. Second thing was, it was extremely efficient. Okay. Like when I was doing old metascripting, I'd maybe get a good entry out in 15 minutes. Now, if I metascript for 15 minutes, I'm probably going to get 5 to 6 Metascript entries completed, and each one is going to feel meaningful and impactful, right? So it just allows you to get a lot more work done. And it's just as potent, if not more potent, because it goes right to the heart of things and just checks the boxes off needed to create a beneficial conditioning event in your brain, just super, super fast. And then, with the understanding of how to apply it, it just also made it much more natural. It made it something like interesting. It made it organic. It made it feel like you weren't writing the same things every time. You were giving yourself custom tailored what you needed that day. And so it would just be continuously compelling because it's always operating off of what's fresh and real and meaningful to you right now. So in a nutshell, the way the new Metascript method is different from the old one is that it's built around these 3 transformative questions that I seem to see to be the foundation of everything necessary for self-improvement, right? Like beyond, I guess, the spiritual stuff, connection to God, right? Like, so that would be first. Then it's like, all right, well, what are the tactics? What are the strategies? 3 questions combined in the Metascript method. To me, that's the biggest bang for your buck that exists in the self-improvement world. And if you're curious, see what the heck I'm talking about, all you got to do is click the link below and I'll send you to a training where you can learn it right now, get up and running in a few minutes. Okay. And then I'll even hit you with a follow-up email series that'll give you additional details for how to apply the technique. I hope you guys like it and check it out. Let me know what you think below. I love getting these questions. If you got questions yourself, just send them over to podcast@frontlineman.com and I'll see you all in the next one. Booyah.